Welcome in Big Ten Today on a Monday. We are presented by CDW. Great to have you with us. Dave Revson, Rayfeld Davis getting set for another week. If you are a hoops junkie, as you and I both are, last 3 days, I mean, it can't be better, right? You get to watch every team over the course of a weekend.
Oh, it was big time. You got to see Michigan State fight back, get back to their toughness. You got to see Michigan do what Michigan does, find ways to win close game. Crazy. Wisconsin did the impossible, went to Mackey Arena and put up 90 in a win, and then we're finally seeing what we've been saying all season. Maryland may not just have the best backcourt in the conference, but one of the best backcourts in the country. It was a big-time weekend of hoop.
It may have one of the best teams in the Big Ten. It's really impressive how well Maryland has played here lately. The one thing that gets interesting this time of year, and we're a month away from having a bracket. Like a month from now is the day after Selection Sunday, and we'll sit there and pour through it. You start to get a sense now for what the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee thinks of the Big Ten and of the whole country. That's our big story. I love this top 16 reveal every year because, again, you get a little bit of a feel for how the committee is viewing the country more broadly and how it's viewing the Big Ten specifically. 3 Big Ten teams among the group of 16, which came out just before the action started on Saturday. The before is key because Purdue was a 2 seed, Wisconsin was a 3 seed. And we'll talk in a bit about what happened when those two got together. But as you said, Rayfeld, it was Wisconsin going into Mackey and winning, and then Michigan, a 4 seed. Pretty amazing to see Michigan up there after where they were a season ago. I mean, again, if you would have said a year ago that we're going to get this bracket reveal and Michigan's going to be in the top 16, it would have been remarkable. Obviously, the SEC is having a great year. That was reflected in that reveal. But what stood out to you mostly from a Big Ten point of view?
Michigan State. No Michigan State stood out to me. And I know they took the losses on the West Coast. I know they lost to Indiana at home. But I look at some of these teams, and I look at the quality of wins, and they're not to where Michigan State is. And I know this came out before they went on the road and beat Illinois out of Champaign. Maybe after that game, they get in that top 16. But I look at the wins a team like St. John's has. They don't have better non-conference wins than Michigan State. I think Michigan State is one of the better teams in the country. I think when you get Michigan State out of that top 16, I feel disrespected for the Big Ten. I love Michigan being in there. To go from last place in the league to top 16 is crazy. I finished last place in the Big Ten in 2014, and we were just excited to find a way to get back into the tournament. And these guys have a chance to get not just a 4 seed, but they could rise up into that 2 seed area. It could be fun watching.
Well, you mentioned Michigan State. I mean, it's possible that they took it somewhat personally because they really played well on Saturday. It was a history-making day, and we've been following this, obviously, for the last couple of weeks. They were the biggest story, and that's because the win over Illinois made some history. 354 now in terms of conference wins for Tom Izzo and his amazing career at MSU. He passed Bob Knight, as you see, moved into first place on the Big Ten's all-time conference win list. Remember, had a chance to break the mark on Tuesday, but the Spartans lost at home to Indiana, and they bounced back in a huge way. It did not start well for them. I mean, down by 16 on the road against an elite team. Not only did they come back and won, they came back and won by 14 points. Illinois didn't score for the last 8 minutes plus in this game. Really a crazy tale of 2 halves games, and we saw a couple of those in the Big Ten this weekend. But what did you make of the Spartans against an enigmatic Illinois team?
Yeah, that was in Champaign for the game. It was rocking. The fans were out lining up before the game around 12 o'clock, 6 hours before tip. So the atmosphere was amazing. But I look at this Michigan State team, in that second half, they were big time. I want whatever speech that Coach Izzo gave at halftime. Someone's got to tell me that every morning when I wake up, because they came out and they were aggressive, they were tougher, they were fighting back, they were following the scouting report, and they were getting the basketball where it needed to be. Jackson Kohler was big time on the block. He knocked down a couple threes, but when he mixed it up and got inside, there was nothing the fighting line I can do with him. And that's what he has to be all season long. When they went on the West Coast, their big struggle, not just Jackson Kohler. Cooper Carson didn't arrive. You look at Xavier Booker, he struggled. These guys have got to be aggressive. I look at Michigan State and I look at their 5 men, their 4 men as a collective, because not just did Jackson Kohler go for 23 and 10, but Carson Cooper comes off the bench and gives you 8 rebounds. You need your bigs to be dominant inside when they have it one-on-one. But in that second half, you had guys like Trey Holloman. He arrived, had 11 of his 14 after the break. Jay Nakins was the player that we know him to be in the second half. All 8 of his points coming after the break. Those guys have to be consistent offensively, and then they dug in on the defensive end. Illinois missed their final 19 shots of the ball game. They didn't score for 8 minutes and 30 seconds. It was just a big-time performance by the Spartans.
Some stuff I want to unpack there. I agree with you. Obviously, Kohler was great as the start of the game. He did hit 4 threes.
Yep.
But to your point, I think the thing that I looked at with Michigan State a year ago, and I feel like you and I talked about this quite a bit, was there just wasn't an option to dump it down on the blocks and get an easy basket. And that's no disrespect to Mady Sissoko. It just isn't his game.
Right.
It is Jackson Kohler's game. His footwork is phenomenal. Again, the three-pointers I know get a lot of people's attention, but I think like that low post scoring, when Michigan State can do that, it makes everything else. First of all, it makes up for the fact they're still not a great three-point shooting team. But also just makes them so much harder to defend.
Yeah, it gives them another flow to their offense, another way to score the basketball. You throw the ball inside, Jackson Kohler starts to eat a little bit. Now he's forcing a double team. Now he's forcing the defense into rotations. So then those three-pointers from the outside that you do take, they get a little easier. They turn into those popcorn shots like you're shooting on a gun machine in the gym by yourself when Jackson's able to shoot it out the post. But you got to find other ways to score the ball when you don't shoot it well from deep. It was Jackson Kohler inside, the paint points, but it was also 21 points off turnovers. When Michigan State, when they find other ways to put the ball in the basket, rather it be points off turnovers, rather it be on the offensive glass finding second chance points, or rather it be throwing the ball in the post, those things have to be consistent. That's got to be how Michigan State is going to reach their highest peak of the season, behind these guys, behind just playing hard.
Let's get into the Illini a little bit here. And you mentioned, 19 shots missed in a row speaks for itself. The shot selection, once again, was a lot of three-pointers, and that's been a bugaboo all year. I guess I'm just getting to the point where when Illinois is at its best and you watch them, I really still believe, their ceiling is as high as it can get. And I guess I'm going to believe that until the minute they lose in the NCAA tournament, because I still have seen them look like an absolutely elite team. I think they have probably 3 first-round picks on their team. But somehow, for whatever reason, the whole has been a little less than the sum of the parts at times this year. And this was one of those games where you just, they came out with all the energy that you talked about. Orange Crush was great, and just somehow it fell apart. And I'm just trying to figure out what's going on with them, because I still believe, right, Fel?
I just think it's their shot selection. You look at it, they go 1 of 16 from the three-point line in the second half, and at some point as a player, you have to tell yourself, stop shooting the ball, stop shooting so many threes, stop settling offensively. I love when this Illinois team, when they compete on the offensive end. You know what you get defensively. They're going to go hard. But offensively, they settle. They settle for contested jumpers. They settle for long threes. When they have the mindset to drive the basketball, finish in the lane, get 2 feet in the paint and play from there, that's when I think they're at their best, because then the outside shots start to fall. But they've got to find ways to continue to attack the paint, get 2 feet inside, and find ways to finish at the basket.
I agree with you 100%. It's impossible to disagree with that notion. I think the thing that really bums me out is that they're in a position now where, you look at the games they've got coming up. Really tough games. Got Wisconsin coming up on Tuesday. They got Duke at the Garden next weekend. They're just in jeopardy of getting so buried here seed-wise that it would be very difficult because of the level of teams that they'd have to beat to make a run. So, again, you're the worst three-point shooting team by percentage in conference play in the Big Ten, and you're just hoisting a ton of threes. Okay, were it not for Tom Izzo, I think the most significant result of the weekend would have been the game you mentioned earlier, Wisconsin going to Mackey and beating Purdue. The second half was as beautiful a second half of offensive basketball as I can remember seeing a team playing. I want to run through the numbers. 72% field goal percentage. They had 0 turnovers.
That's crazy.
They hit 50% from 3. And then for those who are into the analytics, points per possession, and again, 1.1, 1.15 is really good. 1.87. 1.87 points per possession in the second half. It's almost laughably good.
Yeah, it was big time. John Tonje, it's almost like he was just licking his chops. It didn't matter who was checking him. John Tonje has to be considered as one of the best transfers, not just in this conference, but one of the best transfers in the country. He goes on the road and just dominated in all facets of the game. 32 points, 6 rebounds, 3 dimes, 10 to 15 from the field. It was almost like he was playing against elementary school kids. It didn't matter. C.J. Cox got a piece. You look at Fletcher Lawyer, he was involved. Braden Smith got a piece of that action. John Tonje was incredible. It wasn't just John Tonje. He was awesome. But Max Klesman got going. And when Max Klesman plays at this rate, Wisconsin is so tough to beat. Has 17.6 assists, got his confidence back under him. John Blackwell was big time in the second half. But how about Jack Janicki coming off the bench? 11 points, made 3 threes, was big time on the defensive end. You need those guys to step up because Kamari McGee gets ejected early on in that game. And where do you go when one of your key bench players is out of the ball game? Jack Janicki stepped up in a big way to go on the road, go play in the Furious Arena like Mackey Arena, shoot at 61% from the game, only 3 turnovers for the game, and you compete on the glass, man. This Wisconsin team, they are dangerous. They are for real. When they get into the tournament, it may look a little bit different from previous years because that backcourt may be the most athletic backcourt that Coach Gard has had at Wisconsin when you think about Tonje, Klesman, and Blackwell, because John Blackwell put Braden Smith in a bottle. He twisted the cap on and never let Braden Smith get back out of there. One of the best point guards in the country. 6 points, 2 for 10 from the field. John Blackwell did his job.
I love the way they are playing. I give a ton of credit to Greg Gard for the way that he has changed this offense, and Kirk Penny deserves a lot of that credit. Assistant coach who basically said, "Hey, we gotta go a little bit quicker here," and they have certainly done that. 94 points, the most they've scored in 95 all-time trips to West Lafayette.
That's crazy.
They were 20 of 22 from two-point range, and this does bring up something that's been an issue with Purdue this year. And again, you lose Zach Edey, I get that, and you lose Daniel Jacobson, who was going to be their rim protector, who's out for the year. But they are 317th in the nation in two-point field goal percentage defense. 317th. So, I mean, you don't want to sound alarm bells for Purdue. I sat up here a week ago and said I think they're the best team in the league, but it's 2 straight losses now. And so, what do you make of Purdue?
They got to be better guarding the ball because, no Zach Edey down there on that block, no Daniel Jacobson. You look at Trey Kaufman-Wren, not a great shot blocker, but it starts with the perimeter defense. Everyone wants to talk about rim protection, keeping guys out of the lane. It starts with perimeter defense. You look at Fletcher Lawyer, you look at Braden Smith, you look at C.J. Cox, Jakari Harris, Miles Colvin. They have to be better. They have to be better on the perimeter. You cannot allow straight line drives. You can't allow easy back cuts. You can't allow simplified baskets at the rim. So it starts with their guards. I know Trey Kaufman-Wren and Caleb First inside. They've got to build a wall. They've got to be there for that second line defense. But if your guards are getting whipped out front, it does not matter. You're just putting those guys in jeopardy to pick up some silly fouls. So I look at their guards. Anytime Purdue has played a backcourt where they've had 3 guards that can score the ball. You think Ohio State, where there was Junie Mobley, Bruce Thornton, Micah Parrish, they struggle because sometimes when you watch Purdue, they like to hide their guys. And it's just simply saying it. Sometimes Fletcher Lawyer, he gets hidden on defense on a non-scorer. Braden Smith may get to play the passing lanes on a guy that may not be able to shoot the ball. So when they play guys that can really fill it up from the perimeter, those 3 guys have to be locked in and engaged on the perimeter. You cannot depend on a freshman to guard guys like John Tonje. Look, C.J. Cox is 18 years old, maybe 19, first year of college basketball. This is John Tonje's 6th year playing college basketball. One of those older guys has to step up and take the challenge and be able to guard better perimeter defense.
That is a byproduct of the times we are living in here in college hoops. No, I hear you. And 2 straight losses. Again, I think they're really, really good. But you go to Michigan State coming up here this week. You still have to go to Illinois. I mean, it's rough. Again, the schedule is so backloaded for so many of these top-tier Big Ten teams, which is why Wisconsin is really sitting pretty because they're the one for whom it really isn't. 4 games yesterday in the Big Ten. Michigan wins yet another squeaker, 86-83 at Ohio State. 6th straight win, all of them by 4 points or fewer. Nebraska rallies from 20 down to win at Northwestern. Maryland overcomes a 4-point halftime deficit to top Iowa by 26 points. And Oregon a winner over Rutgers. Let's start with Michigan. Rafael, 6 straight wins, all by 4 points or fewer. I mentioned that. Just to give you a little perspective on that, that ties for the longest such streak in college basketball since 1950.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's what they're doing crazy. Really is crazy. You just don't win this many close games, but they do. And so why? What are they able to do in these games that others haven't been able.
Well, I always say connected teams find a way to win close games. When you're balled in the locker room, when everyone's on the same page, you find ways to win those close games. But I also have to give credit to Coach Dusty May because he brought in winners. Yeah, these guys haven't played together, but these guys have been in big-time games. They've all been in close games, and they won close games. You look at Trey Donaldson, played for a really, really good Auburn team. He was in many big games, many tough environments, and found ways to win. Danny Wolf, he played for that Yale team. They beat Auburn, so you know he's used to those big games. Vlad Golden's been to a Final Four. He knows how to dominate ball games when he has to. Even a guy like Reuben Jones, the all-time winningest player to play at North Texas. These guys know how to figure it out. They struggled early on finishing out games, but now they figured it out to how to close them out. And I think it's because they do the little things. They rebound the ball at a high level. To go on the road, to go to Ohio State, be plus 15 on the glass, 19 offensive rebounds, 21 second chance points. That's the deal. That's the game. They win these close games because they can find other ways to score the ball. Against Ohio State, it was the offensive glass. We've seen games early on this season, they make 19 threes, 15 threes. You've also seen games where Danny Wolfis goes crazy, Vlad Golden goes crazy. So when you get a team as talented as Michigan and they do the little things and they play together and they play hard, and they like each other in the locker room, these are the results that you're going to get. These guys are rolling at the right time.
They really are. 9 wins now total by 4 points or fewer. No other power conference team has more than 5. So it's nearly double what anyone else has done. Ohio State's really the exact opposite. They have 4 Big Ten losses now in one-possession games. What happened with the Buckeyes down the stretch?
Man, Bruce Thornton got exactly where he wanted to on that last possession. He just short-armed it a little bit. But I look at the Buckeyes right now. Bruce Thornton was great. You know what you get from Bruce Thornton as a point guard. Devin Royal, 26 and 5 assists. He was dominant. But Micah Parrish, you arrived at the party now. You are one of the key contributors to these Buckeye attacks. He gets 9 points, 2-11 from the field. He's got to give them a little bit more. And like we talked about Purdue and their interior defense and their shot blocking ability, Ohio State really struggles when they have to face a team with tough, strong offensive interior players. So they got to find ways to build resistance in the post.
Ohio State has Northwestern coming in on Thursday at a game you probably got to win. Both coaches, interestingly enough, advocated for this game to be played twice every year afterwards. So, yeah, it's a good rivalry game. Again, we understand that football's a little bit different animal when it comes to Michigan, Ohio State, but it's a big game that gets people going. Michigan is rolling, so is Maryland. They outscored Iowa by 30 points in the second half. Like, you win a game by 26 that you were losing at halftime, and we talk about Derek Queen and Julian Reese as well we should.
Right.
It is a great front court. But, man, their guards are good. And to go 3 for 3 in the portal, that to me is what's so exceptional. To get 3 guys who need to start for you and to hit grand slams with each one of them, that's tough. It's a tough evaluation.
Yeah, you look at Rodney Rice, a guy that didn't play last season. So Coach Willard did an awesome job in the transfer portal. I look at these 3 guards, and what I love so much about them, all 3 of them do something different on the offensive end. But all 3 of them can guard any position on the defensive end around the perimeter. Jacoby Gillespie was big time, 26 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds. John Beilein likes to talk about having a computer point guard, and that's exactly what Jacoby Gillespie is. When you need a basket, he's going to give you one. When you need someone to get involved, he can get him the basketball. And he's not afraid of those big-time moments. Rodney Rice is an absolute bucket, can fill the bucket up with points. He can get out in transition. He can knock down a 3. He's great in the mid-range. Rodney Rice goes on a personal 8-0 run against the Hawkeyes in the second half. And then Selton Miguel, he got the party started in the ball game yesterday. You look at it, 17 points, 5 assists, 5 of 9 from the three-point line, just a dead-eye shooter. As a combination, 61 points, 16 assists, and they make 12 threes, and these guys guard. This is not just one of the best backcourts in the conference, but one of the best 3-man backcourts in the country. They can all beat you. They can all have big games. But when they play like this as a collective, they are really tough to beat.
They are indeed. I've talked to a couple coaches this year who have said Maryland may be the best team in the league.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Best backcourt in the country, best front court in the country. They can beat you on the glass. They guard defensively. Derek Queen is a stud as a freshman, an NBA player. Think about it. Julian Reese last season was maybe their second option. He had to have good games for them to win. Now he's their 5th option offensively. He's their cleanup guy. So when you have an all Big Ten caliber center as your 5th option, Boy, these dudes are tough. I think Geronimo will give him something going forward. You get Tafari Gapari back, giving him a little bit. But this starting five, this is enough for me to go on and they can get to a Final Four, in my opinion.
They're really good. 101 points, most they've ever scored in a conference game as a Big Ten member. I was in Evanston, wild game, Northwestern and Nebraska. Northwestern led by as many as 20 points early in the second half. From Nebraska's point of view, look, there's no damage in losing on the road at Northwestern. It's a quad one game.
Yep.
But it would have been a missed opportunity. I mean, let's just be honest. Northwestern is so banged up, and they're without two of their top three scorers. And Nebraska found itself in a huge hole. They got totally out-toughed in the first half. And in the second half, they turned the tables in a big way.
It was big time. You just saw Coach Hoiberg punch the dry erase board, and the dry erase board won. He had to toss it out of the screen. So I look at this Nebraska game. They were getting punked, like you said, in that first half. They almost got knocked out. And it was hard to watch in the green room, sitting and watching Nebraska get punked, because Nebraska is one of the tougher teams that we have in the Big Ten. So what I imagine happened at halftime, I'm sure you've seen Friday Night Lights. When they go into the locker room and Preacher Man starts to go crazy, he's calling out his teammates. I figured that was Juwan Gary in halftime last night in Northwestern, because he came out in that second half and he was big time. He had 13 of his 17 points in the second half. Bryce Williams has 15 of his 21 points in the second half. And this time in the year, it's February, your stars have to be stars. Bryce Williams, Juwan Gary, they cannot take a day off. They have to be aggressive, they have to be productive, and they have to be efficient every night out if Nebraska wants to get back dancing and win a few games in the tournament. Those two guys have to be constant. And then you look at Connor Season, he gets going in the second half, knocked down a couple threes. Braxton Mie maybe had his best game of the season, getting 10.7 rebounds. But this was all about fighting. This was all about Nebraska grouping together, understanding the magnitude of this game. Because Northwestern, they were playing for something. Northwestern is still playing with that fight to get into the Big Ten tournament. So you can't face a team that's fighting to get into the Big Ten tournament when you're fighting to get to the big dance and not come out and play that game as so. Nebraska answered the call in the second half after getting dominated in the first.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought Northwestern played really hard. It's just hard when you only have two guys you can count on to score. What about Oregon? They've lost 5 in a row. They needed to go 2-0 at home, and they did just that. They beat that Northwestern team we were just talking about. And then Rutgers got off to a really nice start in this game, but man, the finishing kick from Oregon last 26 minutes of the game or so was awfully impressive.
Yeah, they were raining threes in Eugene. I mean, Oregon makes 13 threes, only 9 turnovers. They win the war on the glass. They're able to get out in transition and find ways to score the ball. It was big time. This is who we thought Oregon was. This is who Oregon can be. But Jackson Shellstat has to be a constant. Jackson Shellstat cannot disappear. You look at Oregon and you look at their Big Ten wins this season, Jackson Shellstat is averaging 20 points a contest. When they lose, he struggles. And yeah, I can't put it all on him, but I can put a lot on Jackson because he's that talented. He had 19 points against Rutgers in that game. Took that fight against Dylan Harper extremely personal. He's got to be this way every single night. In college basketball, your guards make you go, especially your point guard. Jackson was great. Nate Biddle showed up after not arriving the last few games, had 15 points, 10 rebounds, 5 blocks. Those two guys have to be the charge for this team, and then they got to continue to find other ways to score the ball, whether it be on the break or on the offensive glass.
And then for Rutgers, the two stars just didn't have great games. They combined for 21 points. It wasn't horrible. They just need to get more out of Harper and Bailey and weren't able to do it. Now, multiple games under 500 in the regular season for the first time in 6 years. Left, Nebraska and Purdue next weekend. Everyone else heads out of conference as they prepare for the Big Ten tournament in early March in Evanston. Penn State is your regular season champ. The number 1 ranked Nittany Lions finish 8-0 in conference duels. Iowa second. A Nebraska win against the Boilers would tie them for third with Minnesota. Shane Sparks is here, as promised. Let's start with Penn State. They've now won 70 straight duels, which is remarkable. They win the regular season for the 5th straight year, which is about as surprising as the sunrise, I suppose. I mean, this is what we expected them to do. What do you make of their weekend and their season to this point?
Well, it was interesting on Friday night inside the Covelli Center, over 4,200 fans for Ohio State. And Brendan McCrone at 125 pounds comes out, slaps a cradle on Luke Lillidahl, sticks the Nittany Lions, and that place was crazy. And for a split second, Dave, without Tyler Kasek at 157 and without Greg Kirklead at heavyweight for Penn State, you could see a path for the Buckeyes. But then
Right.
Penn State, they just find a way to get it done. Kind of a wild match at 133. Braden Davis beat Nick Bouzakis at 141 pounds. Bo Bartlett found a way to solve the Jesse Mendez puzzle. It's a great rivalry. He was better on that night 4-2. 149 pounds, another close match. Dylan D'Amelio and Shane Van Ness. Van Ness found a way to win that one. Really impressive redshirt freshman for Ohio State at 157, Brandon Cannon. He got the decision. It's 10-9 Ohio State at the break. But Penn State in those upper weights. Mitchell Messenbrink, bonus points. 174, really good match with Levi Haynes of Penn State. He handed Carson Hartslaw his first loss of the season, and then some more big hitters. 184, Carter Storaci, bonus points. 197, Josh Barr, bonus points. No Kirkleet, so Nick Feldman got the win at heavyweights. But that was a lot of fun. That pin by Brendan McCrone really ignited that crowd and kept the dual meet interesting. It was a really good energy from start to finish. And then yesterday they go to Illinois, win their 70th straight. To give you some context on this, Dave, the Big Ten record was 69 straight dual meet victories by Iowa. That streak came to an end in 2011. Right now, the all-time streak in Division I, Oklahoma State, 76 consecutive dual meet victories. That streak came to an end in 1951.
Wow.
So that's what they are chasing, but Penn State would probably tell you, we're not chasing that. We're chasing a national title, looking for their 12th and 14 tournaments.
Well, they will go for number 71 in a row against American this weekend. I don't pretend to be anything even bordering an expert on wrestling, but I don't like Americans' chances. I don't think it's going to be the Eagles' day against Penn State. Okay, how about Iowa? Weekend sweep. It included a win over Minnesota. The Hawkeyes have a huge duel coming up this weekend that we'll talk about going out of conference. I think it's going to be great against Oklahoma State. But let's focus on the weekend first and what we learned about Iowa. Minnesota's done a phenomenal job with Brandon Eggum. They have had a great season. It's awesome when Minnesota's really good in the Big Ten, and they are. So this match had a lot of hype, and rightfully so, but Iowa wins 7-10. At 125 pounds, they got a really nice win from Joey Cruz. He's a guy for Iowa that just keeps getting better. You can see him develop. He's won some tough matches. Iowa just did a really good job finding ways to win the matches they were supposed to win. They just went out and executed really well. Ja'Cory Teamer right there at 157 had a nice win over Tommy Askey. In those upper weights as well, Stephen Buchanan at 197 pounds with a big win. You see Tom Brands there really liking the efforts. Minnesota got a couple of nice wins at 184. Max McAnally, phenomenal redshirt freshman. He beat Gabe Arnold. And then at heavyweights, Gable Steveson, Ben Keeter. I mean, Gable Steveson. It reminds me, Dave, of back in the 80s, you'd watch the WWF, and I hate to make a WWF reference, but I think it's fair. Gable Steveson should be introduced as from parts unknown. Remember that in the 80s? Yes, I do.
Gable Steveson from parts unknown goes out and gets another tech fall. I mean, this guy, I have never seen anything like it. It's not that easy. At that weight class at heavyweight, 8 of the top 12 from the Big Ten, and he just goes out and, for lack of a better way to say it, just ragdolls guys. Makes it look easy. It's not that easy.
Mean Gene and Bobby the Brain Heenan. Yeah, they would have been impressed. No, it's incredible. I mean, he's 59-0 in his career in dual meets, right? In the best league in the country, right?
He hasn't lost, Dave, since March of 2019. Interestingly enough, one of his losses was in Minneapolis, Big Ten Finals to Anthony Cassara, Penn State. He lost to Cassara a couple weeks later. I believe that was in Pittsburgh in 2019. He hasn't lost since. And he doesn't just beat guys. He destroys guys.
He's had like 3 careers in between.
He has.
There's been a little lag time. All right, we mentioned Nebraska. They still have the one match left against Purdue, but they just annihilated a ranked Indiana team. I mean, Indiana's, not bad. 39-2. Largest point differential this weekend. So give us a little perspective on where the Huskers are.
Nebraska's really, really good. They got 2 dual meet losses, one to Iowa, one to Penn State. This is a very, very, very good Nebraska team. And yeah, they won 9 of 10 matches. And Angel Escobedo's done a solid job elevating the Hoosier program as well. Big win for Nebraska. Inside Devaney, it was another packed house, able to honor some of the seniors. Caleb Smith at 125 got his 100th career victory. Ridge Lovett, the reigning Big Ten champion at the weight class, goes out and gets a fall for the Nebraska crowd. They're really good, and I'm really looking forward to watching Nebraska down the stretch because they can do some big things at both the Big Tens and the national tournament.
Ranked 5th in the country, and again, that matchup against Purdue on Friday is the last conference duel in the Big Ten. So we mentioned a bunch of teams going out of conference this weekend, as is kind of the tradition at the end of the regular season. Iowa, Oklahoma State, I know they've done this for a few years now. Man, this is great. I mean, number 2 against number 3. It's in Iowa City. It's going to be on the Big Ten Network. So if you're a Big Ten wrestling fan, and I know there are a ton of them, this is the place to be this weekend on Sunday, I believe. Give me a little insight into this matchup.
I can tell you this, if I had to, Dave, I would leave our network studios here in Chicago and start walking to Iowa City. This dual meet, Dave, I think has
You could probably make it there if you started now.
I probably could,
Yeah,
and I'd have a slow jog. I mean, I would make sure I got there. This dual meet, to me, Dave, I think it could be the biggest, most memorable dual meet of the entire season.
Wow, so bigger than Iowa, Penn State?
I believe so.
Why?
Because when you look at matches on paper, and again, they're wrestled on the Resolite,
Yeah.
but for the sake of argument, to answer your question, I have this one going 5-5. I think it's 5-5.
So how close it is?
So close.
Okay.
It's going to come down to bonus points. I mean, you look at 165 pounds. Michael Caliendo of Iowa, Cam Amin from Oklahoma State, the former Michigan Wolverine. They wrestled twice last year. Sudden victory wins for, where am I at here? At 65 from Caliendo. 74, Dean Hamady, former Wisconsin Badger, Big Ten champion 2 years ago, 2-time All-American. At 174, a match I'm looking forward to, is it going to be Nelson Brands or Patrick Kennedy for Iowa? We saw both those guys wrestle this past weekend. Nelson Brands won on Sunday. We haven't seen him in 2.5 months. 184, Dustin Plott of Oklahoma State, national finalist. He has lost 6 times in 2 years. 5 of those are to Parker Keckheisen, the reigning national champion at the weight class from UNI, who's a scoring machine. Will Iowa go with Gabe Arnold, or will they go with Angelo Ferrari? Gut feeling for me, don't know, just a gut feeling. I think they go with Ferrari at 184. 197, you'll have Stephen Buchanan and Luke Serber. That's a 1 versus 6 matchup. Buchanan's undefeated. And then at heavyweights, Ben Keeter for Iowa against Wyatt Hendrickson of Oklahoma State. Hendrickson was at Air Force Academy for 4 years, called him the Great American Hero. He's 17-0. He's a pinning machine. So who's going to step up? And what I like about this dual meet, Dave, they're both really good this season. Iowa is 13-1, only lost to Penn State. Oklahoma State 13-0. Last season when they met in Stillwater, Oklahoma State was undefeated. Hawkeyes handed them their first loss of the season. So based on how good they are right now, and then you throw in the history. These are the 2 most storied programs in college wrestling history. Oklahoma State, 34 team titles. Iowa, 24. Penn State in third with 12. But, I mean, these are 2 of the big dogs on the block with Oklahoma State and Iowa. And the fact of the matter, Dave, is, again, it's going to be so close. It's one of those, I would say this, getting back to the bonus points. If you're in this dual meet and you're up by 7, you better win by 8. Like, you better win by 8. What makes dual meets fun, too, is you can be a hero getting beat by 7. You lose by 7, but you save the bonus point. You fight for your team, and that's what makes dual meet wrestling so fun. I think Carver Hawkeye is going to be some kind of rockin' on Sunday night. That's going to be a great night on the Big Ten Network. You mentioned Purdue, Nebraska. And Purdue's wrestling well. 2 of their last 3 wins in conference. Nebraska, we talked about them, and then Oklahoma State, Iowa. I mean, that is a cherry on top of a phenomenal Big Ten schedule with the Big Ten championships less than 3 weeks away.
I just wish you had more enthusiasm for this, and I wish you had a better grasp of the material. Like, if it, like that. That's really the missing link for you. Seriously, great stuff.
I love coming on, Dave. Thank you so much.
Always appreciate it. Thanks, Shane. Women's hoops from the weekend. UCLA bounced back from its first loss of the year to top Michigan State at Pauley. Far from easy, though. Trailed entering the fourth quarter for the first time all year. USC followed up its monumental win over the Bruins with a tight victory over Washington, a game the Huskies led for more than 27 minutes. And how about Illinois? What a great story. This has become 8 straight wins after topping Nebraska. Women's tourney had its top 16 bracket reveal this weekend as well. The Big Ten 3 teams in this one, too, including the Bruins as a 1 seed, Trojans not far behind. They were at 2, and then Ohio State, the other team in the bracket, the Buckeyes at 3 seed. That was all revealed yesterday. As for the Bruin men, they got a battle in Bloomington on Friday night, but they came away with a 4-point win over Indiana. UCLA led by as many as 13. Give IU credit, though, really hung around against a very good Bruins team. Rafael is back with us. So what stood out about that one?
The shot making from the Bruins, because when they went on that big losing streak, when they lost 4 or 5 games in a row, Coach Mick Cronin's going crazy, calling guys delusional. Sometimes you're just not making shots, and that's what was going on. You look at Kobe Johnson, Sky Clark, Sebastian Mack, and Dylan Andrews. They've been much better over the last 9 games. And at Indiana, in Assembly Hall, it was Kobe Johnson, 10.6 rebounds. Sky Clark maybe had his best shooting performance of the conference season. Only 11 points, but his 3 for 3 from the three-point line were big time, because we've been talking all morning. Guards make you go in college basketball. You need guards to make plays. When things get stagnant, your guards got to step up and drive the basketball and get someone open. And Sky Clark and Kobe Johnson did exactly that down in Bloomington when UCLA needed to play, when Indiana was fighting back. Those guys made play after play to get this dub for UCLA because they needed it. You took that loss at Illinois. You don't look down at that one. You go on a road, you struggle, but they needed to come away with one of these wins, and they did it on the backs of their guards. Tyler Bilodeau was great, but you need your guards to show up, and they did in this one.
And I thought their bench came through like little contributions when they needed them. Max Stefanovic, guys who were starters a year ago who are in different roles now. And then I continue to Adai Martis, just great. I love him. I think he's really good. I think he's going to be a complete stud here going forward. Indiana playing better. Give them credit. They got Purdue. Purdue coming in Sunday. That's their next game, so they're off until then. What a story Minnesota has become. I mean, going out to USC, doing something that, for instance, Michigan State wasn't able to do, and that was beat the Trojans at the Galen Center. They've won 2 of 3. They won 5 of 8. I thought what was really impressive in this game was Dawson Garcia didn't have it. And give USC credit for that. But Dawson Garcia has at times been kind of a one-man show for Minnesota. He gets 7 points in this game, and they still beat USC on the road. That speaks volumes about the development of some of these other guys.
Yeah, it's big time. I go back to that Ohio State loss where you feel like Minnesota gave a game away. You feel like they should have won that game. I think those other guys got so much confidence out of that ball game because Dawson Garcia was on the bench in foul trouble. He was not a contributor in that game. But you take a really good Ohio State team in the overtime. It was guys like Patterson stepping up, Isaac Osama, Frank Mitchell, and that's who won this game for them out on the West Coast. Because if I was to tell you, Minnesota goes on the road, goes to L.A., have 3 guys in double figures, and none of them are Dawson Garcia, you think they lose that game. But Lakai Patterson was outstanding. 25 points and did it in a variety of ways. Knocked down a couple threes, got it to the mid-range, finished at the rim. He was huge. And I thought Frank Mitchell played like a grown man against little kids, just big, physical, going after the ball. 16 points, 12 rebounds, 6 of them on the offensive end. He was big time. And then Osama, one of the more talented freshmen that we have in this league, is really starting to build some confidence. He gave him 12 points. But you look at Minnesota, you go on the road, your star doesn't play well, other guys step up, but you still have to do the little things. Only 10 turnovers. You out-rebound USC by 9. You find ways to score off of turnovers, 15 points there. It's a full, complete effort. I'm so happy for Coach Ben Johnson because these guys could have gave it in a long time ago. They kept fighting, and now they're seeing the fruits of their labor.
I am too. Really happy for him. And I really think we've talked about this, and this is maybe a topic for another day. I think the rev share era is really going to help Minnesota. I think it's going to even the playing field a little bit. And Ben Johnson can coach. There's no question about that. Another team's getting better and better. Washington. They go into Penn State and they get a win. They've won 3 of their last 5 now. What do you make of that win for the Huskies going all the way across the country getting a W?
Oh, it's huge. You know who I really enjoy watching? It's Kepnov. I really enjoy him. Just the
energy.
The energy, the big physical dude. He's one of the only people I know that will scream and yell with emotion after someone tries to dunk on him. So he gives you everything he has. It was big time. But I love Great Osipor in this game. This is the Great Osipor that I've been looking for all season long, and it had nothing to do with his points. Only had 6 points, but he dominated the game. 13 rebounds, 10 assists, had a double-double without scoring the basketball at a high level. And then you look at Makai Mason, DJ Davis, they gave him the production that Coach Danny Sprinkle's been expecting all year. Makai Mason can really score the ball. He just got to do it in a confident manner. He gave him 20 points. DJ Davis gave him 14 off the bench, knocked down 3 threes. This Washington team, they're not selling the season in. They're playing for something. Right now in the Big Ten, a lot of teams could quit. But you look at Washington, all of these guys have expectations to play at the next level. That's why you see Great Osobor still going as hard as he has been. I love what they're putting together in Washington to finish this season.
It's pretty crazy with all the double-figure games that he's had this year that it was the points that kept him from a triple-double. I mean, but no, he's a great all-around player, and we've talked about this all year. He leads them in scoring, rebounding, assists, steals. He can fill up a stat sheet. Penn State, meanwhile, 11 losses in their last 12 games. The one thing I'd say that was a little bit of a silver lining for them, they got Ace Baldwin going a little bit. Shot the ball better, looked healthier, so maybe he could play well here down the stretch. Dramatic conclusion of our show coming up next. Rafael and I will get you set for tomorrow's action in the conference. Got 3 games, including huge battles in East Lansing and Madison. Our keys are just ahead. It is time to go around the Big Ten. Good hockey series this weekend. Michigan and Minnesota with the Wolverines pulling out 2 wins in overtime on Friday in a shootout Saturday. TJ Hughes' goal and an assist, extending his point streak to 15 games. Gymnastics, another dominant performance for UCLA's Jordan Childs. The Olympic gold medalist took the all-around in the Bruins win over Michigan State, a meet which saw the Bruins tally a season high on the uneven bars. Softball, Jordan Ball back healthy for Nebraska, and she fired the 7th no-hitter of her career Sunday against Northern Colorado. Ball's ERA is a microscopic 0.30 on the year, and oh, by the way, she's hit 5 home runs. A great start to the year for Maryland's men's lacrosse team. They're now 3-0 after topping number 2 Syracuse 11-7. Remember, the Terps had a great run last year, made it all the way to the national championship game. Back to hoops, no men's games tonight in the Big Ten. There's some good women's action. The men get it going again tomorrow. 3 games, got a huge one in East Lansing. Purdue visiting the Spartans. Illinois heads to Madison. They will take on the red-hot Badgers. And UCLA will host Minnesota. Let's focus in on Purdue and Michigan State first. Every game the rest of the way is a quad 1 game for the Spartans. They have a really challenging schedule. Purdue needs this win here, maybe to get back on track, losing 2 in a row. What do you think as these two tangle?
Oh, I'm looking forward to one matchup in this game, and it's Braden Smith and it's Jeremy Fears. Jeremy Fears has been dying for this matchup with Braden Smith all season long. I know Jeremy. I talked to his father here and there. He is going to be amped up, ready for this matchup. And you look at Braden Smith coming off a game against Wisconsin, 2 for 10 from the field, 6 points in a loss at home. I know he is just itching at the bit to get back there, out there and compete. But how does Trey Kaufman-Renn deal with the interior presence defensively of Michigan State? You have 4 or 5 bigs that can make life tough for Trey Kaufman-Renn inside. So those 2 guys, when you look at Purdue, Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Renn, they got to be ready for the charge. They need someone to step up and help them. But for Michigan State, you're back at home, big-time game, big-time atmosphere. I'm ready for the Izzo to get going.
And just the 1 home loss this year, that Indiana game last week. Defining week for Purdue, at Michigan State, at Indiana, 2 really big games for them. Illinois, Wisconsin, if we see the version of Wisconsin that we saw really in that entire game against Purdue, but certainly in the second half, I don't really like Illinois' chances. But again, I've already said, I think Illinois got as high a ceiling as anyone in the league. So 2 really good teams. What's your focus in this one?
Wisconsin's defense. Because one thing about playing Wisconsin, rather if it's Greg Gard, rather if it's Bo Ryan, they have the ability defensively to make you feel like you're open on the offensive end. And sometimes, I learned the hard way, you are open for a reason. So I'm looking forward to seeing Illinois not settle from the 3-point line, drive the basketball. Too many athletes on that Fighting Illini squad for Wisconsin to be able to keep them out of the lane and keep them off of the glass. But John Tonje is playing like the Big Ten Player of the Year at this point. He is on a heater, been balling since struggling against USC. I'm looking forward to those guys getting after it at home. Wisconsin is a team that's tough, and they're being underlooked right now.
If we are sitting here a week from now and you tell me that Illinois beat Wisconsin and beat Duke, I'd be the least surprised person on the planet. They are as unpredictable as it comes. Those will be 2 great games coming up tomorrow.